Hey, what's going on, everybody? So I wanted to come up and do another video. It's been a really long time. I haven't done a video in a while. So I wanted to do a follow-up video on R. Kelly and talk about, some of the things that's going on. So this actual video will focus on the 8 reasons that the civil case that Heather Williams has against R. Kelly will be at a complete standstill, right? So the case is going to be, I believe, right? I can't predict the future. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the judge is going to decide. But I believe that Heather Williams' civil case against R. Kelly, it's going to be at a complete standstill until the civil proceedings have, I'm sorry, until the criminal proceedings have completed. The civil case that Heather Williams has against R. Kelly is going to be at a complete standstill until the criminal proceedings have completed. Now, I don't want to brag, right? But 2 months ago, someone made a comment on my channel. I think it was according to this, it's Daddy Lolo. Haven't heard from him in a minute, but basically, I responded to his comment. His comment wasn't really relevant, but my response to his comment is relevant to this subject matter. Basically, I said I did a little research. I believe the filing of the civil case was improper, as when the victim is involved in both, the criminal case must precede the civil. Otherwise, a judgment for the victim in the civil case would imply guilt, thereby poisoning a chance for a fair criminal trial. And then I said, don't quote me on this because I'm not sure, right? So I'm not sure what the judge is going to decide, but the lawyers for R. Kelly in the civil trial have basically filed a motion asking the court to pause the civil proceedings, right? They've actually filed a motion to stay the civil proceedings against R. Kelly to basically not necessarily stop it, but just to put it on hold so that they can move on and focus on the criminal trial. So basically, I have these 8 reasons here. So let's go ahead and get into it. So the 8 reasons why Heather Williams' civil proceedings against R. Kelly will be at a complete standstill. First of all, you filed a civil case at the same time you filed the criminal case, or at the same time the state filed the criminal case involving the same issue. That's improper. That's improper, and I've already said why it's improper in my YouTube comments. But basically, it's improper because he can't really have a fair trial if he's put in a position where he's forced to basically divulge information that's going to impact him in the criminal proceedings. Right? He's going to be in a position where he could possibly be forced in the civil proceedings to talk about the criminal things that's going to impact the criminal case. Now, this is actually how Bill Cosby was undone, because I think Bill Cosby had a situation where they were thinking about file indicting him on sexual abuse charges, but what ended up happening is that they made an agreement that he would give testimony so that they would be able to sue, so that the young lady involved would be able to sue him civilly. So they did that, and basically he had some type of, I don't know if he actually had settled out of court or if she actually won. I can't remember exactly what happened, but what I do remember is that they took the comments from the civil deposition and used it to prosecute him criminally, right? So that has the same potential here, right? So filing such a case is improper, and it's a dirty trick. If your case is strong, if you really believe your case is strong, then why use a dirty trick like this? Why not just let things take its course? Go ahead and basically go ahead and do the work that you need to do to get your civil case done, but don't file it, right? Because when you file it, you put everyone in a situation where they basically have to respond to it, right? So if I personally think they're doing this because they want to do one or two things. Either they want to bombard him with litigation so he can't afford to or doesn't have the time to respond. And it basically worked, because basically when he got the civil served for the civil case, he was in jail. He was in jail over child support. So he's married and in litigation. So that could be one of the reasons. And the other reason is that maybe they figured they could get an easy win, right? We're going to file this civil case because he's so busy with the criminal stuff and the child support that he's just going to take a fall on this and just go ahead and pay us out. So let's just go ahead and file it. To me, I don't know. It's just a dirty trick. So I think the fact that they use this dirty tactic, I think it's basically going to be one of the reasons that Heather Williams' civil case against R. Kelly is going to come to a complete standstill. She basically filed the civil case on February 21st, 2019, and then the indictment was laid against him on February 22nd, 2019. So I don't know if she was coordinating with the state or she had access to information to know when to file this thing. But I think ultimately it's a dirty trick. I think she knew, well, not maybe she knew, but her lawyers knew. And I think it was orchestrated. This was a basic strategy to basically mire him in litigation. So let's just keep it moving. So the second reason that her case is going to come to a complete standstill, the civil case, is because of the Fifth Amendment. The Fifth Amendment is a fundamental right. Everybody has a right to not incriminate themselves and plead the Fifth. And basically, you should be able to do that. But he couldn't do that, or if he did do that, it would basically hurt him. We're going to get into that. But first, let's talk about this case law. And before we do that, I'm going to admit all the different reasons after this second reason is really a part of the second reasons. I just kind of decided to break it all up and make it look like it's several different reasons. But it's really all part of the second reasons. So anyway, so let's just go ahead and pretend that there's other reasons after this. So the case law basically says that where criminal and civil action are pending simultaneously, courts may stay the civil proceeding, and that's basically case law from Jacksonville Savings Bank versus Kovac, right? So basically, the case law says that uh, when you have this situation, the courts have the right to basically pause the civil proceedings, right? So now let's get into this case law, which is actually going to be the third reason. The third reason basically looks at the posture of the criminal proceedings, and where it means posture, I'm going to take that to mean, where things are at. How far along have things progressed, and how things have developed. So in this situation, the criminal case is basically much further along than the civil case. And basically, it doesn't make sense to proceed with the civil case when the criminal case is much further along. So from that perspective, being that the criminal case is much further along, and we're going to get into this a little bit later, the criminal case is much further along. It makes much more sense to let the criminal case play out so that you can get all the information you need to proceed with the civil case. And even if the criminal case wasn't further along, it still would make sense for the criminal case to proceed, uh, unless there was a situation where the criminal case was spawned by the civil case, which isn't the case here, which isn't the situation here. So let's just move on, and we'll talk about other reasons why it makes sense to stay the civil proceedings. So the fourth reason that Heather Williams' case will be at a complete standstill, the reason the court should stay the civil case, is because of the interest and the burdens of the defendant. Again, this is all part of reason two, but we're just going to call it the fourth reason. So part of that case law is that it looks at the interests and the burdens of the defendant. So as I stated before, and I've kind of given this up already, basically if R. Kelly goes to the civil trial and then he basically speaks, then anything he says in a civil trial is going to be used against him in a criminal trial. Everybody's going to be watching it. So even if they have some type of weird agreement, which I don't even know if they could have, to say, okay, we're going to have the civil trial, but we're not going to let any of the information in the civil trial go to the criminal trial, it's still going to impact them because basically everybody's watching TV and everyone's watching the media and everyone's going to know that, he said certain things in the civil case. And then they're going to, in their mind, that is going to dominate or resonate when it comes down to trying him criminally. So I mean, it's kind of a no-win situation because basically, if he goes to the civil trial and he decides not to speak, well, some people find that an admission of guilt, right? And then they'll go on to say that just because he wasn't just because he won, I'm sorry, just because he won the civil case doesn't mean he wasn't, guilty. So we're going to go ahead and find him guilty because he didn't speak in the civil case. He looked guilty in the civil case and he didn't speak. He didn't speak because he knew he was guilty. People think like that. I know that people actually think like that. Some people think like that. They think that silence is an admission of guilt when in a lot of situations that's really not the case. So now, so this R. Kelly really just has a lot to lose, right? There's a lot of burden on him. If he forfeits the civil case, then he's basically, giving up a lot of money, and they're basically going to, basically going to rape him for lack of a better word, no pun intended, financially. On the same token, if he decides to speak in the civil case, then that information is basically going to be used against him in a criminal case. So it's really just a no-win situation. So the fifth reason that Heather Williams' case is going to come to a complete standstill is that same case law talks about public interest, and basically there's the case law says that if there's some sort of public interest, then this would probably give weight to not staying the case and proceeding parallel to the criminal trial. But in this situation, there's no real public interest, right? Some people would just say, well, there's a Me Too movement. Well, yeah, I get that people want social justice for women, and I too want social justice for women. And again, so I'm when I'm making this video, I don't necessarily condone any of the alleged actions that's been committed, or allegedly has been committed by R. Kelly. And I think that women should have equal rights. But on the same token, it's kind of a double-edged sword. There's no real public interest in proceeding with this trial. Uh, you know, so I think this is yet another reason that the Heather Williams civil suit is going to come at a complete standstill. So the sixth reason that Heather Williams case is going to come to a complete standstill is that the case law also talks about the interest in the expeditious resolution for the plaintiff, that being Heather Williams. So, in my opinion, I think that actually proceeding with the civil case while there's a criminal case going on won't actually be quicker for her. And the reason I say that is that there's going to be some evidence in the criminal case that she won't have access to, or they won't have access to, right? Because it's already been submitted in the criminal case, and the criminal and the state is not going to allow that evidence to be given up in fear that it could be jeopardized. It could jeopardize their case. In my mind, this is one scenario, right? So basically, to me, it seems like it would be much easier and much quicker to go ahead and let the criminal proceedings go ahead and run its course and finish out. And the beauty of that is that if the R. Kelly loses the criminal case, then it's an easy win in the civil case, right? Because they don't have to prove that he's guilty. They don't have to prove that he actually did these things because it's already been proven in a criminal case. So basically, the work that would be required of her lawyers would be lessened greatly, to a great degree. It's going to greatly reduce the amount of work her lawyers is going to have to put in, and it's also going to greatly reduce the time to basically complete the civil case. Hell, R. Kelly may even say, you know what, at this point, I'm in jail for the rest of my life. I'm going to be focused on appeals. I'm just going to go ahead and just take this loss because I don't even have enough money to continue to pay for the stuff, or any little money that I have left. I'm going to basically uh, allocate that towards my appeal. So to me, it just makes sense just to let the criminal case go ahead and proceed, and that's going to be quicker for Heather Williams. That's only if he actually loses. If he wins, it's a totally different story. A totally different story. So the seventh reason why Heather Williams' civil case is going to come to a complete standstill is that it involves the same subject matter. The case law basically talks about whether or not the subject matter is different. In this situation, the subject matter is the same. So you're essentially looking at relitigating the same thing over and over and over and over. And in my opinion, the criminal takes precedence. So, the eighth and final reason that Heather Williams' civil case is going to come to a complete standstill is that the case law talks about whether both actions were brought by the government. And in this situation, the actions were not both actions were not brought by the government, but they're essentially the same thing. And you best believe, or I would believe, it'd be hard for me not to believe that there wasn't some type of coordination between the lawyers of Heather Williams and the state of Illinois. And even if there wasn't any type of coordination between the two, then I think there was obviously a situation where the lawyers kind of knew what was going to happen, what the state was going to do, and when these charges was coming. Maybe they had an inside man in the state's attorney's office, and they knew when and about these charges were going to be filed. So they filed them slightly ahead of time, or around the same. It was ahead of time in this case, February 21st versus February 22nd. But my point is that it was so coordinated. I believe it was so coordinated that it may as well have been filed by the government. Both the civil and the criminal may as well have been filed by the government. So I think this would basically qualify in some way to the case law, saying like, hey, these are actions by the government. These aren't actually actions, both actions by the government, but it was coordinated in the same breath that the government filed its indictment. So therefore it qualifies. So, that's it. That's my 2 cents. Let me know what you think. I'm actually going to make a different version of this video. I'm going to walk through the actual uh, filings that R. Kelly's civil lawyers made. But at any rate, please subscribe, comment below. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you think that the case should be put on pause or stayed, if they say, or if the case should move forward. Thank you for watching.